Hi everyone, it's Susan Del Bene. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining me today. This is an opportunity for me to talk with you about what's happening in Washington, D.C. and how we're responding. I also wanted to make sure that and so it's important that we all stay connected. So I want to make sure that you know that you can continue to stay in touch with me through my office. My website is delbene.house.gov, and on social media it's Rep Delbene. So that's one way you can share information, ask questions. But very importantly, today I am so honored that we are joined by our new, maybe it feels like it's been a long time, but our new Attorney General, Nick Brown. Want to talk to you about what's happening in Washington, D.C., but also what's happening right at home to help address what we're seeing from the Trump administration and the impact that's having on our communities. So thank you, Mr. Attorney General, for being with us. It's great to see you.
Likewise. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Well, I know that all that's happened in terms of impact on funding, folks losing their jobs, people concerned about what the future hold, the impact of tariffs on our region, all of these things are things that are greatly concerning to people in our community. And I've heard from my constituents. I recently did a telephone town hall, and normally we get about 2,000 people on a telephone town hall. This one was 14,500. Folks want to make sure they know what's happening, what we're all doing, and it's so important that we hear their stories because we know the impact has been great right here at home.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Our office has been inundated with calls of concern from people on a whole host of issues as they're seeing their jobs impacted, their funding for vital programs impacted, and we've been really diligent in trying to protect Washingtonians' rights in these instances.
Well, thank you for that. And maybe we could start talking about federal funding. Congress, and as a member of Congress, we pass legislation to say specifically how taxpayer dollars should be used, where money should go, what programs should be funded. And right at the very beginning of this administration, they decided that they were going to decide where they might, what bills they might pay, what programs they might fund, what they may not fund. It was a freeze on paying for programs that have already been approved by Congress. That impacted folks in our community right away, and I know there's been legal action there, and the judges have weighed in. But I know you have also taken action. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the work you've done there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're right. The way that this is supposed to work is Congress authorizes certain legislation with funding attached to it, and the president then has to execute those laws and make sure that they're funded properly. But what we've seen time and time again over the last 6 weeks is the president and his administration just blatantly violating the law and what Congress has authorized. So Washington State has been part of multiple lawsuits trying to protect some of that vital funding. We're a part of two lawsuits, one with the challenges to the funding freeze by OMB that is being led by my colleague attorney generals in Rhode Island that all of multiple states have joined. We're also part of a separate lawsuit protecting the funding streams for the NIH, which is so important here in Washington. Washington State University, University of Washington, a number of other entities get vital programming that does research to save people's lives, to fund really important programs here in our state. And so we're part of those two cases. Thus far, we have been prevailing. In both cases, the judges have issued preliminary injunctions stopping those freezes from taking effect. When we found out that they're not really living up to that, we've gone back to court to enforce those actions. And so thus far, we've stopped some of the immediate harms. But we're seeing a host of other cases where the administration is attempting to freeze and stop some really vital programming that we, making sure that we're showing up to challenge. Washington is also part of a lawsuit challenging the appointment of Elon Musk as being unconstitutional that's being led out of the District of New Mexico. And we're also part of a case going after the way that the administration has been firing people in federal government and really doing that illegally, violating notice provisions, violating due deliberation that is required under law. And so there's a lot of work that we're doing and happy to be a part of it, but we have to stay really close pay really close attention to what's happening because it's having a huge impact.
And as you said, it's been just a little over 6 weeks and feels like an eternity in terms of all that's happened. And it's important for all of us to stay up to date on what's happening and track what's happening so that we can make sure we are standing up for people's rights and for our Constitution and for Congress's power in terms of the power of the purse. And I know when we talk about federal funding, I think it's important for folks to know, sometimes these are funds going directly to our cities, to our communities, to organizations in our communities for programs. And they're counting on that funding. That funding's been approved. They budgeted based on it. And to have that be cut off, not everybody has a lot of money to just be able to keep going while they wait to see if that money's going to come through. So this work has been very, very important. And I also wanted to bring up, you talked about medical research and the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. I was recently at Fred Hutch. We have this incredible cancer research center right in our community. And I started my career, maybe people don't know, doing biomedical research. And you can't just turn research on and off. The folks are in middle of clinical trials and doing this great work. And we've seen incredible work in our region to help not just come up with new treatments for cancers, but also looking at cures. You turn research off, it could take years to start it back up again. And so these funds and keeping it going is so, so critical. But you brought up federal workers, and it's important for people to realize too, we have a lot of federal workers right here in the great state of Washington who've been impacted by these decisions.
Yeah, we have tremendous federal workers all across Washington doing some vital work, a lot of work that we don't know about, but also work that is more in the headlines. We've got a big federal workforce out at Hanford providing some of the, top-notch nuclear security for our country out there. We've got workers all across here in Western Washington doing vital work. And for me, so many federal workers are also veterans, and Washington is home to so many veterans. And really to see the way that the administration has dismissed their value to the country and gone about this in a very callous way of eliminating their employment, and time again also making mistakes. Right? We're seeing these stories of people getting fired and then 2 days later saying, "Oops, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to fire you. Please come back." And to treat the federal workforce that way, people that are dedicating their careers to public service, to serving the greater good, is really offensive for me. And just to see the impacts that we're having on people's lives and the services they provide is something that we want to pay very close attention to. So we joined a lawsuit just last week led by some labor groups out of California to oppose the way that those firings have been done. And we actually have a court hearing later this week on that to see if we can get some relief for those workers because of the services that they're providing, not only for Washington, but for the entire country.
Absolutely. You talked about Hanford, Bonneville Power Administration. So much of our region is dependent on power coming from Bonneville, and firing line workers, folks who are making sure that our transmission system continues to stay up and running. Forest Service, we have so many beautiful public lands. Forest Service, national parks have lost many people who are critical to our region and helping maintain and protect our forests and keeping our national parks open to the public. All of these things are at risk, and that's just one piece. But I want to kind of thank you for mentioning our veterans, because many of these veterans who've been fired also work for the Veterans Administration, are helping support fellow veterans. And so not only is it losing this great workforce, it's impacting the services that are available to our communities, to our veterans from the VA. So the impacts are great down the line. And it's not about saving money. You don't save money by randomly cutting people who are doing important work. In fact, it might be more expensive for all of our communities to lose resources that are helping people get by, that are helping improve and support our small businesses and supporting families. And it probably, in many of these cases, can be more expensive, the actions that the administration has taken and that Elon Musk and his team has taken, which is why it's an interesting that they go by this name of the Department of Government Efficiency, when nothing they're doing is very efficient at all, and doesn't seem to have any rational backing. I think we can do things that talk about efficiency and streamlining, but that means really understanding how organizations work, the important work they do, and understanding the critical people that are doing that important work, and then assessing where you might be able to have savings.
Yeah, then I'm all for finding efficiencies as well, but it's important that the administration follow the law when they're doing that, and we can't just wantonly disregard people's employment rights or funding provisions that Congress has authorized. And so my obligation as the Attorney General is to make sure the administration and other stakeholders are following the legal requirements that Congress and others have set forth for them. So that's first and foremost. And when we're talking about jobs that are lost, particularly for the veterans community here, we're talking about people that help provide health care for veterans, housing assistance, job transitions, all these vital services for the people that have signed up to sacrifice on behalf of their country, and many, for their families impacted as well. And so it's really a serious issue that I don't want to disregard, because we have so many veterans here whose lives have been upended because Elon Musk just saw them as a number on a spreadsheet rather than a person who's providing vital services. And so we have to stay really diligent in watching these actions and hold the president accountable for failing to follow the law.
And, Congress is a co-equal branch of government. It's our job to provide oversight of the executive branch, and it's been unfortunate that the majorities in the House and the Senate, the majority hasn't been as interested in oversight. That's a critical role we're going to continue to do. And I know House Democrats are fighting hard to make sure we bring folks like Elon Musk in to answer questions. And to your oversight point too, we have a critical role in our federal agencies. The Office of the Inspector General, their job is to kind of be the watchdog for each agency. One of the things that happened at the beginning of this administration, also not done legally, was firing the inspector generals in these agencies that normally would be calling out when folks were fired that shouldn't be fired or funds weren't being used appropriately. First thing they did was tell those people they had to leave. And so there will be continued work happening there too, and through the courts, because those are critical roles, and their role is to be a watchdog. So it's unfortunate one of their first move was to try to get rid of those folks. We need transparency and sunlight.
Yeah, I mean, that, and then coupled with what we saw from the Attorney General last week, talking about finding and weeding out federal employees who don't agree with Donald Trump, we're basically explicitly saying that we're going to fire someone because of their political beliefs. And that's just really scary, sort of the types of actions and comments that we're seeing from leadership all across federal government, to really taking retribution against federal employees who are just doing their jobs on behalf of the country. And so, it's really important that we have people like the IGs. It's really important that we have a nonpartisan civil service workforce across federal government. And this administration has really just turned it on its head. So it's important for Congress to continue to do their oversight responsibilities. It's important for states to exercise their sovereign rights to advocate for their people. But it really takes people in the community being really aware of these issues as well.
Well, thank you for the work you're doing to stand up for our state and our communities. If people want any more information or learn about the work that's happening, what's the best way for them to stay in touch with your office?
Well, we have a lot of information on our website here at the Attorney General's office, and encourage people to reach out through those channels to us to make sure that we're understanding the impacts that we're seeing from the federal administration. So always feel free to contact us on our website. That's the best way, and we'll try to be out in public and engage with as many stakeholders as we can.
Thank you. And my website, again, is delbene.house.gov. We have a section on my website for Share Your Story to make sure that we are getting information about the impacts folks are feeling throughout our region, so we can follow up, share those stories, and continue to do work to address, do everything we can to help and get us to a better place. So thanks for all the work you're doing. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today, and we'll continue to stay in touch. Have a great day.
Thank you, Congressman.